Imagine a wolf so terrifying that a panicked village didn't just hunt it down like common prey. Instead, they put the beast on trial, dressed it in human clothes, and hung it from gallows. This was the fate of the Wolf of Ansbach, a predator that paralyzed an entire community. Why would a town treat a wild animal like a convicted criminal in the year 1865? This bizarre event serves as a chilling gateway into the dark heart of the German wilderness. Welcome to a landscape where the fairy tales you know were actually warnings written in blood. Germany is a land defined by its picturesque rolling hills and ancient, towering Gothic castles. But beneath that beauty lies a vast network of dark forests where the sun rarely touches ground. These woods are not just parks, they are cathedrals of shadows where biological rules seem to bend. What kind of predator requires a massive Gothic castle to keep the outside world truly safe? Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were the famous authors who walked these paths and recorded our deepest nightmares. The brothers Grimm didn't invent these monsters. They merely recorded things already watching from the tree line. Their stories spoke of lycanthropy and creatures that defy explanation, rooted in the very soil of Germany. From the terrifying legends of the Aufhocker to tales of Skinwalkers, the folklore is undeniably grim. Even today, the modern Bundeswehr patrols areas where the local Kure people once whispered of ancient spirits. These stories traveled from the depths of history, surviving the cold tension of the Iron Curtain era. Scientists now look toward DNA testing to solve mysteries that have haunted these hills for centuries. Imagine a lone soldier at a remote HLZ, hearing a low growl that sounds far too human. We are entering a world where the line between historical fact and paranormal legend completely disappears. Prepare yourself, because the things that go bump in the night are closer than you think. To understand the terror haunting modern soldiers, we must look back at a chilling historical precedent. In the year 1865, a darkness descended upon the quiet German town of Ansbach. This wasn't a phantom or a ghost, but a predator that defied every natural law known. A massive wolf began stalking the outskirts, leaving a trail of absolute panic in its wake. The terrified citizens of Ansbach soon realized this was no ordinary beast hunting for simple survival. There was a calculating intelligence in its eyes that suggested something far more sinister than hunger. Folklore often speaks of the Aufhocker, a creature that clings to the backs of weary travelers. But for the people of Ansbach, the threat was flesh and blood, yet felt entirely unnatural. They didn't see a mere scavenger. They saw a monster capable of deliberate and malicious intent. As the body count rose, the line between animal behavior and human criminality began to blur. This creature's reign of terror forced the community to take drastic, almost ritualistic action. Eventually, the villagers managed to corner and capture the beast that had plagued their nightmares. What happened next remains one of the strangest recorded events in the history of German folklore. Instead of a quick death, the wolf was treated exactly like a captured human outlaw. The townspeople meticulously dressed the dead wolf in a suit of traditional man's clothing. They even added a wig and a mask to make the beast resemble a local official. This macabre display wasn't just for show. It was a formal declaration of the wolf's guilt. In a final, grim act of justice, the dressed creature was publicly hung from a gallows. This execution served as a message that malicious intelligence would be met with human retribution. It established a cultural precedent where these creatures were viewed as something beyond mere biology. The concept of lycanthropy wasn't just a story here, it was a physical, documented reality. For generations, the German psyche has been conditioned to see the wolf as a calculated killer. These aren't just animals to be feared, but intelligent entities that belong in the criminal court. Even today, the memory of the Ansbach wolf lingers in the shadows of the Black Forest. This historical event bridges the gap between ancient myths and the strange reports from modern soldiers. We are moving from the era of public executions to the classified files of the Bundeswehr. If a 19th century village could be this terrified, imagine what a modern patrol might encounter. To understand the military encounters of today, we must explore the ancient names for yesterday's impossible monsters. In the borderlands between Germany and Poland, there is a name that even modern locals hesitate to speak. They call it the Aufhocker, a shape-shifting entity that has haunted the dark forests of Germany for centuries. Unlike a simple predator, the Aufhocker is like a parasite that targets your very will to move forward. Legend says this creature doesn't just hunt you. It literally leaps upon your back to weigh you down. Imagine trekking through the dense underbrush when an invisible weight suddenly crushes your spirit and your spine. What happens when a myth decides to stop being a story and starts becoming a physical stalker? This unsettling tradition is deeply rooted in the same soil that birthed the infamous Wolf of Ansbach. But the terrors of the German wilderness do not stop with a single criminal wolf or a heavy shadow. Tales of the werewolf of Ponit still echo through the valleys, reminding locals that nowhere is truly safe. Deep within the Harz Mountains, stories of a legendary white wolf have chilled the blood of many travelers. These regional legends establish a terrifying presence of entities that can shift their forms at will. As we cross the border into Poland, the language changes, but the underlying fear remains exactly the same. The Kirby people of Poland have their own ancient descriptions for these terrifying, shifting creatures. In their traditional folklore, these monsters are not merely animals, but something far more sinister and calculated. Surprisingly, the Kirby people refer to these predatory shapeshifters by a very familiar name, Skinwalkers. Is it a coincidence that cultures separated by borders describe the exact same terrifying biological anomaly? For the Kirby, these Skinwalkers represent a bridge between the physical world and a much darker reality. To truly grasp the horror, we must understand how these entities have evolved within the local psyche. Lycanthropy in these regions isn't just a Hollywood trope, it is a historical scar left on the land. The Iron Curtain may have divided nations, but it could never contain the ancient spirits of the forest. Local villagers still warn that some shadows in the woods have a weight that no man can bear. Whether you call it an Aufhocker or a Skinwalker, the result of an encounter always the same. These entities thrive in the silence of the wilderness, waiting for a solitary soul to lose their way. The folklore serves as a map of the impossible, marking territories where humans are no longer the apex. Behind every legend of a white wolf or a leaping shadow lies a grain of terrifying, physical truth. It is within this landscape of ancient dread that a modern military operation would face the unthinkable. This isn't just a campfire story meant to keep children away from the edge of the woods. For one modern soldier in the Bundeswehr, the ancient Aufhocker was about to become a physical reality. He didn't find a legend in the trees. He found a hunter that ignored every law of nature. If you are traveling alone at night in regional Germany, the locals tell you never to stop, because once it is on your back, it does not just get heavier, it begins to feed. The mechanics of the Aufhocker are specific, terrifying, and technically documented in ancient regional lore. The name Aufhocker translates directly from German to a chilling phrase, the leap upon. This creature does not stalk from a distance. It lunges onto its victim's weary shoulders. Regional tales describe this nightmare as a massive black dog with eyes like burning embers. This is no ordinary animal, but a vampiric beast that often walks on its hind legs. Imagine a towering canine silhouette emerging from the darkness to mimic the gait of a man. It specifically waits for the cover of night to target those traveling through the woods alone. Folklore suggests it has a supernatural sense for finding criminals or those hiding dark secrets. Some call it a form of lycanthropy, but the German legends speak of something far more parasitic. Near the old borders of the Iron Curtain, these stories take on a much darker, physical weight. It is like an invisible anchor dropped onto a moving ship, dragging the victim toward total exhaustion. As it clings to you, a profound sense of lethargy begins to drain your very life force. How do you fight something that weighs down your soul as much as your shoulders? To some, it resembles the American Skinwalker. Yet its specific methods are uniquely and terrifyingly European. This energy drain is not just a ghost story. It is a physical reality for some. The symptoms described in these old legends match exactly with reports from high-security military bases. The Aufhocker represents a predatory force that ignores the laws of nature and military discipline alike. One soldier in the Bundeswehr soon learned that these ancient definitions were far more than myth. Most people imagine Hollywood werewolves when they hear stories of monsters stalking the dark German woods. However, the entity haunting the Bundeswehr bases operates on a far more sinister and exhausting level. To truly understand this creature, we must look at the literal translation of its terrifying name. In German, the word Aufhocker directly translates to the chilling phrase, "one who leaps upon." This isn't just a name. It is a description of its preferred method of sudden, violent ambush. Unlike the wolves of cinema, regional legends describe the Aufhocker as a massive, jet-black vampiric dog. This beast is often seen standing or walking on its hind legs like a distorted, hairy man. It ignores the pack mentality of natural wolves, choosing instead to hunt its victims in total isolation. Old folklore warns that the creature specifically targets those traveling alone through the dead of night. There is a darker psychological edge to its hunting habits that separates it from mere wild animals. Ancient tales suggest the Aufhocker is drawn to the scent of criminals or those carrying heavy guilt. It waits in the shadows of the Iron Curtain for a soul it deems worthy of its weight. When the creature strikes, it does not simply bite or claw at its terrified and helpless prey. Instead, it leaps onto the victim's back, forcing them to carry its impossible, soul-crushing physical weight. This is where the vampiric nature of the Aufhocker becomes truly apparent to those who survive. It doesn't just drink blood, it drains the very life force and energy from the person's body. Victims describe a bone-deep exhaustion that makes every single step feel like a battle for survival. This energy-draining aspect explains why soldiers reported feeling completely spent rather than just being afraid. They weren't just facing a predator, they were being hollowed out by an ancient, supernatural parasite. Even the most hardened infantrymen found their strength vanishing as the creature's presence grew heavier. Understanding this distinction is vital for anyone trying to survive an encounter in the German wilderness. It is a hunter of the spirit, a weight that no amount of physical training can overcome. As the soldier on the high-security base soon realized, his rifle offered no protection against this strain. The physical manifestation of this legend was about to make its presence felt in the modern world. Now, let us look closer at why the military's high-tech equipment failed to capture this elusive nightmare. Boot camp is meant to be a controlled environment, but Adolf Schaefer soon realized some forces remain untamable. As a young soldier in the German Bundeswehr, Schaefer was trained to handle any conventional military threat. The year was the height of Cold War tension, but the coming danger didn't originate from across the border. His basic training took place in an East German boot camp, where discipline was the only absolute law. On a seemingly normal afternoon at 5 p.m., the base's rigid routine began to crumble under mysterious circumstances. Without warning, technical problems rippled through the electric grid, plunging the facility into a state of growing unease. The electric grid failing was like the base's nervous system shutting down, leaving the armed soldiers in total darkness. What happens when the lights go out on a massive military base filled with highly trained, armed men? Officers scrambled to restore order, yet the source of the electrical interference remained frustratingly elusive to everyone involved. For 3 long hours, the base sat in a tense silence, waiting for the power to return on its own. By 8 p.m., the situation had grown desperate enough for the drill sergeant to take decisive, manual action. Schaefer was suddenly called forward, his name echoing through the barracks as the drill sergeant issued a direct command. Along with 3 other soldiers, Schaefer was ordered to descend into the cold depths of the generator basement. Their mission was simple: find the malfunction and restore power to the base before the night progressed further. They moved past the silent HLZ, shadows stretching toward the Iron Curtain as the air grew thick with tension. Every boot click on the concrete floor sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive silence of the failing facility. Why was the largest, most reliable generator, the only one failing while the others remained perfectly functional. Rumors of the Aufhocker and ancient lycanthropy often whispered through the barracks, though Schaefer dismissed them as mere superstition. The soldiers whispered among themselves, wondering if this was a test or a genuine act of sabotage. As they approached the heavy basement doors, a sense of unnatural cold began to seep through the heavy steel. Schaefer led the way, his heart hammering against his ribs as they prepared to enter the darkened mechanical heart. The silence reminded him of stories about the Kure people and their legends of entities that mimic humans. Modern soldiers might have demanded DNA testing, but in this darkness, Schaefer had only his basic military instincts. He briefly wondered if a Skinwalker had somehow bypassed the high-security perimeter of the East German base. Schaefer was sent to the basement to fix a generator, expecting a simple technical malfunction in the works. Instead of a simple mechanical failure, the soldier discovered something that resembled a gruesome crime scene. Adolf Schaefer stands 6 feet tall, but the entity looming over him was at least a feet taller. If the generator basement was the warning, the sleeping quarters were the site of a terrifying confrontation. Within the silence of the Bundeswehr barracks, a new kind of darkness began to take shape. The entity was like a tall, pale splinter of ice manifesting in the corner of the room. Standing at least 8 feet tall, the creature towered over the soldier's frozen, reclining form. Its skin was a sickly, pale gray, devoid of any warmth or human resemblance in the moonlight. The figure possessed a terrifyingly skinny frame that looked almost skeletal against the bedroom walls. As Schaefer stared in absolute horror, he realized the figure's face was smooth and completely noseless. What does a creature with no nose breathe, and what fills its unnatural, hollow lungs? Long, razor-like claws extended from its spindly fingers, catching the faint light from the barracks hallway. Schaefer tried to scream, but his body felt pinned by a heavy, suffocating weight. How do you call for help when your lungs feel like they have been completely emptied? The noseless giant simply watched him, its presence radiating an ancient and predatory hunger. Time seemed to stretch into eternity as the pale figure remained motionless in the small room. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the gray entity vanished back into the freezing dark. In the days following the encounter, Schaefer felt hollow, his energy completely and utterly depleted. He struggled to perform his daily duties, feeling like a ghost haunting his own military life. This sudden exhaustion mirrored the mechanics of the Aufhocker, a soul-sapping weight from local legend. Could this pale, 8-foot-tall predator be the same monster that stalks the Iron Curtain? The silence of the barracks felt heavy, as if the air itself had turned to lead. Every shadow in the corner now resembled the spindly limbs of that pale, noseless thing. Alone in his quarters, Schaefer realized that military precision offered no defense against the supernatural. This encounter shared the same primal terror found in legends of the Skinwalker and the Aufhocker. He remained a hollow shell of himself, drained just like the victims of ancient folklore. Days later, Schaefer felt hollow, his energy completely depleted, just like the victims of the Aufhocker. The phenomenon wasn't confined by the Iron Curtain or the steel fences separating east from west. While Schaefer dealt with shadows in the east, a soldier near Detmold saw something strangely shimmering. In 1981, a British soldier named Francis found himself stationed amidst the dense forests of West Germany. Is it possible for an ancient monster to cross the most heavily guarded border in the world? Francis was positioned in a remote field approximately 60 miles south of the historic city of Detmold. The dense German wilderness felt heavy, as if the trees themselves were keeping watch on the troops. Francis and another soldier were tasked with the vital military objective of establishing a helicopter landing zone. To the men on the ground, this specific mission was known simply by the military abbreviation, HLZ. Setting up a landing zone in those ancient woods was like lighting a match in a cave. They were pulling Stag, the military term for guard duty, while they prepared for the incoming arrival. The two soldiers worked in the dim light, unaware that the darkness was slowly closing in around them. What do you do when your mission is to light up a landing zone, but you attract a fiend? Every movement in the undergrowth felt amplified by the eerie silence of the cold West German night. They stood their ground, representing the British forces, but the environment felt increasingly hostile and unnatural. The isolation of being 60 miles from any major city began to gnaw at their military discipline. While the Bundeswehr faced their own demons, the British soldiers were about to encounter an impossible nightmare. They carefully placed the lights to guide the helicopter, creating a beacon in the middle of the void. Little did they know, their presence was being scrutinized by eyes that had never seen a machine. The mission seemed routine enough, but the atmosphere suggested something was fundamentally wrong with this location. The cold air bit at their skin as they monitored the silent horizon for any sign of flight. Francis adjusted his gear, feeling a sudden, inexplicable prickle of dread crawl slowly up his rigid spine. Behind the curtain of trees, a presence much older than the Cold War began to stir and observe. The transition from a standard operation to a paranormal encounter was about to begin in the German shadows. This encounter would soon challenge everything they knew about the Aufhocker and the nature of the Skinwalker. They were waiting for a helicopter, but they were being watched by something that didn't need wings to move. If you think these military encounters are just campfire ghost stories, wait until you see the evidence. We are moving past grainy photos into the cold, hard world of modern forensic science. Do you remember Stefan Richter, the man who stood his ground against the impossible in Brandenburg? During that desperate encounter, Richter did the unthinkable and threw his sharp hunting knife at the beast. For a moment, the blade disappeared into the darkness, leaving the men wondering if it struck home. Later, Richter and Lee Brickley returned to the site and found the weapon covered in thick blood. The blood was already dried, a dark crimson stain clinging to the cold steel of the blade. They didn't just clean the knife, they sent it to a private laboratory for high-level DNA testing. The results were baffling, as the DNA did not match any animal species currently living in Germany. It wasn't a deer, a wild boar, or any known canine wandering the local German forest. The technicians ran the sequence again, certain they had made a mistake in their initial analysis. The second test confirmed a 96% match to a creature known as the steppe wolf. A 96% match sounds conclusive, but it is the missing 4% that keeps investigators awake. Finding steppe wolf DNA in Brandenburg is like finding a wild polar bear in the Sahara Desert. Steppe wolves are almost entirely confined to the frozen, desolate regions of deep Siberia. How does a predator from the Siberian steppes end up on a hunting knife in western Germany? To get there, it would have had to bypass Bundeswehr patrols and a heavily guarded Iron Curtain. Some whisper about lycanthropy or the ancient legends of the Kure people and their shape-shifting ways. Is it possible we are dealing with something closer to a skinwalker than a common forest animal? Or perhaps the Aufhocker of old has found a way to manifest in the physical world. If this thing is mostly Wolf, what exactly is making up that final, unidentified 4%? Was this truly a Siberian Wolf in Germany, or something else using that DNA as a disguise? Whatever it was, the HLZ was no longer safe for any soldier who valued their own life. Before Adolf Schaefer ever saw the entity, he stumbled upon its terrifying and violent calling card. Industrial steel is designed to withstand extreme pressure, but something had shredded this metal like paper. This was not a simple equipment failure. It was a physical assault by something with impossible strength. Deep within the base sat the third generator, the primary heart of the entire facility's power. As the largest source of electricity, its steady hum was usually the only sound in the room. But on this night, the heavy machinery had been silenced by a brutal and unknown intruder. Schaefer approached the massive unit and found the outer metal shell marred by horrifying, deep gouges. These were not mere dents, they were intentional claw marks that had pierced right through heavy casing. The scratches looked as if Agent fingernails had effortlessly peeled back the generator's thick skin. What kind of biological claw possesses the sheer force required to puncture an industrial steel shell? The violence did not stop at the surface, as the intruder reached deep into the machine's guts. The jagged marks were deep enough to sever internal cords, instantly crippling the base's power supply. Even the heavy-duty batteries were found mangled and destroyed by the relentless force of the attack. No standard tool used by the Bundeswehr could have left such primitive yet devastatingly precise marks. Why would a creature from the German wood specifically target the base's most vital power source? The damage suggested a predator that understood exactly where to strike to plunge the base into darkness. Ancient legends of the Aufhocker speak of crushing weight, but this evidenced a tearing, predatory rage. If this was a Skinwalker, it possessed a physical power that defied every known law of biology. Looking at the shredded steel, Schaefer realized he was not just dealing with a myth or ghost. Every forensic detail pointed to a monster that was dangerously real and incredibly hostile toward technology. This was no longer just a strange sighting. It was a clear declaration of war against the base. The shattered generator proved that the entity was no longer just watching from the dark shadows. The investigation began at the third generator, the largest source of power for the base. Adolf Schaefer knew that losing this specific unit meant total reliance on backup systems. He expected a mechanical malfunction, but the reality was far more violent and disturbing. Deep, jagged scratches were etched into the surface of the heavy industrial machine. These massive claw marks had actually pierced through the generator's thick outer metal shell. Looking into the gaps, Schaefer saw that the damage went much deeper than the surface. The force of the strike was enough to slice through the critical internal cords. Thick wiring that powered the entire facility now hung in useless, shredded ribbons. Even the heavy-duty batteries had been smashed, as if targeted by a deliberate blow. This wasn't a simple engine failure. It was a tactical strike against the camp's lifeline. The level of strength required to peel back industrial steel was frankly impossible for any animal. It felt as if a Skinwalker had decided to dismantle their defenses piece by piece. Each deep gouge in the metal spoke of a predator with incredible physical power. More terrifyingly, the damage suggested an intelligence that understood exactly how to kill the power. The entity had reached inside the machine to find the most vulnerable components. Schaefer stood in the shadows of the Bundeswehr facility, feeling the weight of the silence. Without the main generator, the Aufhocker could now strike from the absolute darkness. The shredded metal was a physical warning that no amount of technology could protect them. They were no longer just observers, they were being systematically isolated by a monster. Every wire cut and every plate of steel bent proved this was no accident. The entity had turned their most reliable machine into a heap of useless, torn metal. In the flickering light of his flashlight, the deep grooves looked like scars on the base. Far from the Iron Curtain, this new enemy was dismantling their hope of safety. This wasn't a case of traditional lycanthropy, but something much more mechanical and cruel. The forensic evidence was clear. Something was preparing to move in for the kill. At precisely 1:30 a.m., the clearing fell into a heavy, suffocating silence that signaled something was wrong. Francis wasn't alone in that clearing, and the thing watching him from the shadows wasn't human. No wind stirred the leaves, and the usual night insects had vanished into an eerie, cold void. His eyes scanned the wood line, searching for the source of the growing dread prickling his skin. About 80 meters away, right at the edge of the dense forest, a massive silhouette stood perfectly still. The moon provided just enough light to reveal a figure that defied every law of nature known. It stood tall on two legs, casting a shadow that stretched unnaturally long across the frost-covered grass. This wasn't just a tall man. This was a giant measuring between 7 and 8 feet in height. It seemed to ignore the biting cold, remaining motionless like a statue carved from the very darkness itself. Francis gripped his gear, realizing that Schaefer's 8-foot entity was no longer just a campfire ghost story. Then, the entity's eyes caught the lunar glow, reflecting a piercing and unmistakable yellow shine toward him. Those yellow eyes didn't blink, locking onto the soldier with a predatory focus that felt like a physical weight. As he stared, the creature's body began to shimmer in the moonlight like a strange, nocturnal heat haze. This shimmering effect made the beast look almost translucent, a classic trait often reported in Skinwalker encounters. It was as if the air around the creature was vibrating, blurring its physical edges against the trees. How does something that large move so silently and remain so completely hidden until it chooses otherwise? The figure shimmered like a heat haze in the middle of a cold night, mocking the soldier's senses. Every muscle in Francis's body tensed as he realized the sheer scale of the predator watching him. The Iron Curtain usually separated men, but here, it seemed to separate our world from something far older. For several agonizing minutes, the soldier and the shimmering giant remained locked in a silent, terrifying standoff. Suddenly, the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades began to vibrate through the damp night air in the distance. The creature reacted instantly to the sound, its predatory posture shifting into something even more disturbing to behold. In one fluid, terrifying motion, the 8-foot-tall figure dropped from 2 legs down onto all 4 limbs. It moved with a speed and grace that no human could ever hope to replicate in the wild. Why did the arrival of a single helicopter make such a powerful and massive entity flee so quickly? Without a sound, the shimmering beast retreated back into the thick timber, vanishing as if it never existed. The clearing was empty again, but the memory of those glowing yellow eyes remained burned into his mind. Francis stood frozen, wondering if the creature was truly gone or simply waiting for the noise to fade. As the helicopter blades began to thump louder, the 8-foot giant dropped to all 4s and vanished. Whatever had been watching from the wood line was gone, leaving behind only questions and a lingering terror. The stories didn't stop with the Cold War, as the modern era brought new terrors to Germany. In late 2020, the Rheinigen forest near Brandenburg became a crime scene for the truly impossible. What if you saw a man wearing a wolf skin, only to watch the skin become the man? This unsettling question sits at the heart of a modern investigation that echoes ancient European folklore. British author Lee Brickley traveled deep into these woods to document a case that defies all logic. Brickley is known for his work on the Skinwalker phenomenon, a term usually reserved for North America. Yet, in the shadows of Brandenburg, he found evidence of something far older and much more dangerous. His primary witness was a man named Stefan Richter, who was visiting the forest with his family. What started as a peaceful outing soon turned into a nightmare that would haunt their every waking moment. As they walked the dense trails, the air grew heavy with the same silence reported by soldiers. Stefan Richter suddenly spotted a figure standing perfectly still among the ancient trees just ahead of them. At first glance, it appeared to be a man wearing a heavy, withered wolf skin over his shoulders. This sight immediately called to mind the legends of the Aufhocker, a creature that lurks on forest paths. But as Richter watched, the figure began to distort and change in ways that human bones shouldn't. The transformation was like a shadow stretching and folding itself into a terrifying, new animal shape. The man didn't just remove the pelt, he seemed to merge with it, becoming the beast itself. Before his eyes, the humanoid shape dropped to all 4s and grew into a massive, muscular wolf. To bright yellow, burned through the dim light, mirroring the gaze of the entity seen years earlier. These glowing orbs established a chilling pattern seen in military encounters throughout the old Iron Curtain. Lycanthropy is often dismissed as a myth, but for the Richter family, the physical reality was undeniable. This wasn't a simple costume or a trick of the light, but a total biological shift in reality. Brickley's investigation suggests these creatures might be what the Kure people once described as primal spirits. While most people would freeze in terror, Stefan Richter realized his family was in immediate, mortal danger. The creature prowled toward them, its presence carrying the same suffocating weight as the legendary Aufhocker. In this moment of pure survival, the boundary between modern man and ancient predator vanished completely. Richter's encounter adds a disturbing new chapter to the files of the Bundeswehr and local authorities. Many skeptics demand DNA testing, yet those who have seen the yellow eyes know the truth. The Rheinigen incident proves that the forest still hides things that modern science cannot yet explain. Stefan Richter didn't just run from the monster that emerged from the shifting skin that night. He fought back against the impossible, and he left the dark woods with a terrifying trophy. We are looking at a global phenomenon that predates modern borders and spans entire continents. Half a world away, the Navajo and the Hopi tell the exact same terrifying stories. They describe the same yellow eyes, the same shimmer, and the same star-born origin. How can two cultures with no contact share the exact same impossible and ancient myths? These creatures are like a global shadow that falls over the world's most ancient places. In the deep heart of Poland, the Kerpi people harbor secrets that stretch back millennia. This tribe, also known as the Kure, speaks of shape-shifting entities descending from the heavens. They believe these monsters arrived from the stars thousands of years before modern history began. These celestial beings were not mere visitors, but something far more permanent and predatory. To the Kerpi, the terrifying Aufhocker is just one face of a much larger cosmic horror. Their lore points toward a specific location known as the White Wilderness Forest in Poland. Local tradition holds that this dense woodland serves as a portal for supernatural creatures. It is a place where the thin veil between our world and theirs completely dissolves. Are these ancient forests actually portals used by entities to enter our physical reality? The Kerpi treat this land with a reverence born from centuries of fear and observation. Across the ocean, the Navajo and Hopi tribes speak of the Skinwalker with similar dread. Like the Polish entities, these North American shapeshifters are tied to the stars above. Both cultures describe a shimmering distortion that precedes the arrival of these ancient, inhuman hunters. The similarities between the European Aufhocker and the American Skinwalker are too precise for coincidence. It suggests a shared history that bypasses the Iron Curtain and the limits of geography. Curiously, both the Kerpi and the native tribes are notoriously protective of their sacred stories. They rarely share these tales of star-born monsters with outsiders or modern researchers. This silence is not born of ignorance, but from a deep respect for the danger. To speak their names is to draw their attention across the vast, dark reaches of space. This shared code of silence suggests that the threat is as real today as ever. The Bundeswehr soldiers in Germany were likely encountering something far older than any military structure. We must consider that our ancestors weren't imagining monsters, but recording a cosmic invasion. These entities have been hiding in the shadows of our forests since the very beginning. Whether they come from the stars or the shadows, they are here and they are watching. Our reality may simply be a hunting ground for beings that transcend our understanding of time. This chilling realization leads us eastward, toward an ancient tribe known as the Kerpi people. The Kerpi guard secrets about the stars that would terrify even the most hardened modern soldiers. They believe shape-shifting creatures descended from the heavens thousands of years ago to walk our earth. These celestial visitors did not arrive in ships, but stepped through hidden doors in the landscape. Deep within Poland lies a place where the veil between worlds is considered dangerously thin. This is the White Wilderness Forest, a landscape steeped in legends of portals and gateways. Local lore claims this dense woodland serves as a primary entrance for supernatural entities. Much like the Aufhocker of Germany, these Polish spirits defy every law of modern biology. Yet, the Kerpi are not the only ones who recognize these shimmering doorways. Thousands of miles away, the Navajo and Hopi tribes tell remarkably similar stories of monsters. These American tribes describe creatures that can shed their human skin to become something else entirely. They call them skinwalkers, entities that mirror the shapeshifters feared by the ancient Kerpi. Interestingly, these diverse cultures rarely share their sacred tales about these monsters with any outsiders. They understand that speaking of such things often draws the attention of the creatures mentioned. This code of silence stretches across oceans, connecting the White Wilderness to the American desert. It suggests a global mystery that our modern Bundeswehr is only just beginning to confront. Whether you call them skinwalkers or star-born hunters, their presence across history is undeniable. These portals in the forest provide a terrifying explanation for why these beings appear so suddenly. Imagine an HLZ that isn't for helicopters, but for entities crossing between different dimensions. These beings move between worlds, leaving behind traces that defy even the most advanced DNA testing. Every encounter, from the Iron Curtain to the modern day, points back to these starborn origins. The evidence suggests we are dealing with an intelligence that predates our own civilization. As we look closer at the forensic reality, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. These beings are not ghosts, but something physical that enters our world through the white wilderness. The legend of the Skinwalker is merely one piece of a much larger, global puzzle. We may never truly know what Adolf Schaefer or Stefan Richter saw during their terrifying encounters. From the Bundeswehr bases to the Iron Curtain, these shadows defy every law of our known world. We search for labels like lycanthropy or skinwalker, yet the truth remains chillingly beyond our grasp. Perhaps the weight of the Aufhocker is not just physical, but a heavy burden on our understanding. Could these entities be remnants of the Kure people's ancient lore, or something even more primordial? Whether at a remote HLZ or deep in the woods, the military cannot contain what it cannot name. Even modern DNA testing struggles to provide answers when the subjects themselves seem to vanish like smoke. Next time you're driving through a dark forest and feel a sudden, inexplicable weight on your shoulders, will you have the courage to look in the rearview mirror and face the impossible? After all, the truth is often much stranger than the stories we tell to hide from it. Is it truly better to know they are out there, or to stay safe in the dark? Have you ever wondered what might be lurking in your own local woods while you sleep? To explore more of these dark corners, I have joined forces with the incredible Ballin Studios. Together, we launched the Wartime Stories podcast to bring these haunting accounts to a wider audience. We dive deeper into the strange, dark, and mysterious events that happen when the world watches. If these stories of the unknown fascinate you, I invite you to join our growing community. You can find brand new episodes of the Wartime Stories podcast waiting for you every Monday. Subscribe and follow us on your favorite platform to ensure you never miss a single chilling update. Don't forget to like this video and share your own strange encounters in the comments below. We are all investigators here, searching for the truth hidden within the shadows of our world. Until our next journey into the unexplained, keep your eyes open and your mind ready. Make sure to check out Wartime Stories every Monday for more tales of the impossible. Whatever you do, please remember the old warnings and don't go into the woods alone.